And so today, my question to you is, what do you do when you finish a big creative project? Hello and welcome back to the Creative Courage Sanctuary YouTube channel. My name is Studio Songhai. I am a visual and performance artist based in a cloudy today, Edinburgh in Scotland. So if you're seeing my face for the very first time, you are very welcome. And if you are a returning viewer or a subscriber, welcome back and thank you for being here. So in my last video where I recapped some of the reflections and lessons I had learned as a result of doing 28 days of a daily collage practice as part of the Februllage 2026 challenge, I mentioned that I had taken a break from that creative project to do some reflection. Now, most artists rush to the next thing. But actually, the thing that I've discovered is that reflection deepens practice. Let me tell you what I mean by sharing with you a story, if I may. Post-project reflection was not a part of my practice or my routine. Certainly when I started off in my creative practice and in my creative journey. I started off as an actor in London. I was an actor for 10 years. And for the first four years, it wasn't a thing. I was doing what everyone else was doing. I just moved from project to project, moved from thing to thing, and sometimes even projects overlapped. So I didn't give myself a chance to give myself closure for the thing that I had just finished and prepare myself for the thing that was about to come. I didn't do any of that. I was going from project to project, job to job, because the assumption was, or the understanding was, I don't know whether this is still the case because I haven't participated in that world in that way for a really long time. But at that time, I was under the impression and I believed that in order to be considered a viable or working actor, you had to move from project to project, that you are only as good as your next job. Not even the current one. As soon as you land the current one, you need to start thinking about your next one because you're only as good as your next project. And somehow this constant forward motion, well, it wasn't even forward, but this constant movement, because movement doesn't always equal progress. But this constant movement and this constant thing, which actually comes from a place, well, let me speak for myself. For me, it came from a place of fear and scarcity, definitely, because I believe that if I didn't have my next job, then I would starve or my world would cave in. But also it reinforced this impression that if I'm a working actor, I'm going from one thing to the next, one thing to the next, then it means that I must be really good, that I must be in demand. And so then it creates this kind of cycle. But actually, the only thing it created was frustration and burnout multiple times, extreme exhaustion, and I did burn out once in that time. So the pressure to keep paying my bills, the pressure to keep booking jobs with different casting directors, but also the pressure to book better jobs was very real. I'm not going to sit here and say that that was not the case at all, or that, it's just like, just get over yourself. No, those pressures are very real. And particularly in a line of work where you are constantly seeking validation, because by being booked, it means that you are validated somehow. The pressure is real. So I was on this hamster wheel. I was part of this movement thing, and not getting very far except exhausted. I booked jobs and I did okay, but nothing really changed or struck me really, until one day I heard a Hollywood actress, I cannot remember for the life of me who it was, but there was a Hollywood actress on one of these late night shows, And she was saying that actually for her, when she finishes a job, she would take a break. She would take like a mini break before moving on to her next job. I mean, my initial reaction was, well, it's okay for you because you are a Hollywood actress. You get paid in the millions. Like, we're just still we're still at the bottom of the pile. But that statement, that idea of taking a break between creative projects, it really got me thinking, and it didn't leave my mind. It became like this thing that got stuck in my head. What if I could do that? Could I risk getting off the hamster wheel? Could I have the courage? Could I be courageous enough to step off this merry-go-round and to actually step back and to reflect on what has been? Could I be courageous enough to step off, to rest, to reflect, to reset? And what if in doing that, actually my motivations, my dreams, and my desires became clear, and I became clearer about the kind of actor I wanted to be? What if? And so as I entered my 5th year of being an actor, I implemented it, and it worked. My goodness, it worked. So what I started doing was I started taking breaks between projects. And they weren't like huge or astronomical, right? So there would be like, sometimes it would be like 5 days, sometimes 2 weeks. And I would deliberately not go from one project to another and one project to another. I would literally create a buffer, if you like. And the results were they were amazing. Because what started to happen was my goals became clearer. And what I mean by that was, what kind of jobs did I want to book as an actor? What kind of work did I want to do? Who did I want to work with? What was I inspired by? But also my desires or my dreams for the kind of actor I wanted to be also became clearer. I also noticed that this period of rest and reflection somehow also made me bolder, because I became more courageous about saying no to a lot of projects. I became really clear about what I wanted to do and what I wasn't going to do. What I was no longer prepared to settle for, and what I was no longer prepared to do, because I was no longer working from this baseline of fear. It actually made me slightly less fearful, because I started, through this process, I started betting on myself. And it was amazing. But it meant that I also took some radical decisions, right? Which did not please a lot of people. And also, it went against like the prevailing wisdom at the time, which was that as an actor, particularly if you want to be a working actor, that you couldn't choose. You couldn't choose, like you just had to take whatever was given to you. And that if you didn't take it, then there are 100 more actors who are more hungry, more desperate, who will take your place because you are disposable, right? But then I was like, you know what, that's okay. Because I had an acting teacher once who's like a really, she's an amazing actress here in the UK, Canadian by origin, but I had her when I was at drama school, and I took some classes with her. And I remember her distinctly saying to us in the class, she said, whatever is for you will not pass you by. Whatever is for you will not pass you by. And in that time, that also was a quote or a mantra that really stuck in my mind. Thank you so much for giving me that. Because I learned that I wasn't a beggar. That actually, as an actor, I am an asset. Because, try running a production, try, doing a theatre production without any actors around. I mean, good luck. So even if I am disposable, even if I am like whatever you say or you think that I am, I know that I'm of value because you need my body in those spaces to tell those stories, right? So I also became clear about my value, not just as a person, but also what I bring, because I was really committed to my craft. I still love it. I'm really committed to my craft of theatre. I'm really committed to the craft of stagecraft. So I knew that I had something that, casting directors and theatre companies needed, right? So I wasn't completely disposable. So doing this project reflection thing really helped me clarify that. And I learned to reject all these really disempowering beliefs, that I was a beggar, that I had no agency or control over my career or the trajectory of my career. And so one of the decisions I made was to let go of my agent, which was like a huge thing. Sorry, let me just sip up my tea. Red berry tea. Cheers. I let go of my agent. And for anyone who works in screen or especially in theatre, that's a no-no. Getting an agent is like the first step, like the first thing people tell you to do after you get classes and you get some training. But letting go of your agent is never one of the markers of success as an actor, particularly in London, where it's really competitive. Excuse me. But I decided to let go of my agent. And that was like, the sky is going to fall down. You will never work again in this city. You will never attain anything. You will just get like random jobs. You end up working in McDonald's. I'm like, what? Like, what's happening? But the kind of agent I had at the time, I just didn't believe that they had the contacts to be able to get me into rooms of the people that I really wanted to work with, because I actually wanted to do more theatre-based stuff, right? I wanted to work with performance artists. I wanted to experiment with different types of theatre making and really just dive into theatre making. And my agent just wasn't, like, they just didn't have that capacity. And that, I got clear about that as a result of doing this reflection process, which was amazing. I got clear about what I wanted, who I wanted to work with, and my inspirations, right? I'm like, these are the people I want to work with. I still have this dream of working with Ivan van Hove, my favorite theatre director ever. I'd love to work with him. He's just so inspirational. So I let go of my agent. My agent was foaming at the mouth, really like, and my fellow actors were like, you are crazy, you've lost your mind, etc. But I went ahead and did it anyway. So in my 5th year, I set out to, on the road to becoming the actor that I wanted to be. And again, absolute phenomenal results. Not only did I get to keep everything that I made, I didn't have to give anyone a cut of anything that I earned, but also I got to work on some amazing productions, including linking up with an amazing performance artist called Sheila Galani, who is an incredible woman and who I had the opportunity to be mentored by her briefly, and it was transformative and absolutely amazing. I got to work on productions where I did mask work. I learned about shadow puppetry. I did puppetry. I got onto productions where I got to do some more physical theatre stuff, which is what I trained in originally. And I did lots of puppetry work. I did children's theatre, which is so good. I love children's theatre. And I got to do all this like variety. I got so much variety, and I grew. I grew as an actor. I grew, and I was then able to connect with multiple audiences and in diverse contexts and environments, and it was amazing. And so I became the actor that does experimental and mainly like site specific. So I stumbled upon site specific theatre, which I love. I love that. As well as doing like the Shakespeare stuff or whatever, which I have the capability of doing. But I also got to do this, like all these like incredible things. I got to do mask work, like Taiwanese, Taiwanese like mask theatre. Oh, phenomenal. And I became more fulfilled as an actor. And as a result of going down this trajectory, I then achieved my ultimate goal. And my ultimate goal was to be able to pay for all of my bills and to have all of my living expenses and my life paid for purely from my acting work. So I didn't have to get, side jobs or other jobs to supplement my income. I was able to do that until I retired. I didn't retire. I just took a hiatus for a really long time, which I'm still on. But once I achieved that goal, I kind of lost my hunger to do it because I'm like, oh, I've achieved my goal. Like, what's next? And so that's part of what this hiatus was about. And then it enabled me to pivot into visual art and collage art. So thank you for being here with me on the story time. So I'm going to walk you through what this method is, or what this framework that I created to help me reflect in between creative projects. The post-project framework has 5 parts to it, or 5 movements, as I like to call it. And each movement builds on the previous one. So you kind of have to do it so I do it in this order, and if you want to do it, you kind of have to do it in this order, okay? Okay. The first movement is to celebrate and then to rest. Now, this can take any form that you like. The important thing of this step is that you acknowledge all that you've achieved. And a lot of us don't do that, right? We kind of just do the thing and then, well, I do. I'm not very good at savoring moments. So I do the thing and I'm like, okay, like next, what's the movement? Next, right? As opposed to just pausing and saying, Theodora, you did a thing. Congratulations. Theodora, you just completed this project. And look at what you've achieved. Look at the result of this project. Well done. Pat yourself on the back. Literally, it's really that simple. And celebration is basically a means of rewarding yourself for the thing that you've accomplished, this thing that you have finished. A lot of people don't finish things that they start. So if you've completed a big project, even if you're getting paid to complete the project, right? Celebrate yourself. Honor the thing that you have accomplished, because you have accomplished something. Don't rush to dissecting it. That comes later. But for now, celebrate. And that could be going out for dinner to people who have been with you during your process or during the time when you were completing the project. It could be something as simple as, for me, for example, like I'm more of a shower girl. So one of the ways I reward myself is by having a nice bath. And I go all out, Epsom salts and, lighting and all of the things. Like I treat myself to something that I wouldn't normally do. Or I would, sometimes I would get a novel that I really wanted to get into, so I would go buy it. Or in my case, I would just see if it's available at the local library, and then I would celebrate by reading something that, stimulates my mind, but something I've always wanted to read that's not related to work. And that's really important. It must be like a completely different thing, okay? So all of these celebrations cannot be related to work. There must be something completely outside of your thing. So treat yourself. A nice dinner, maybe a nice cake, even though I'm not always a fan of rewarding myself with food, because food is not the only way of rewarding yourself. Could be taking a trip somewhere, could be whatever suits you or whatever helps you do that, like it's important that you celebrate. And then after you've done that, the next thing is within this first step is to rest. So shut things off. If you're taking a chunk of time, it could be 3 days, 5 days. If you have a week, fantastic. But you shut off. You don't talk about work. You don't do the work thing. You literally give your body time to rest. And it doesn't just mean sleeping, although that's always a good shout. Like taking naps during the day, my favorite thing. But it could also just be doing something really gentle, something like a walk through a park. In my case, like living in Edinburgh, which is great because we're so close to nature, I would go up Carlton Hill and just to, look at the view of the entire view of the city. Or go to a park like Meadowbank or by the river. So I live quite close to the river, walk on the river, just any way I can rest and re-energize myself. A bit like Superman, like getting close to the sun, like it kind of re-energizes him. It's a bit like that. But like I said, rest, there are many forms of rest. If you like, I can make a video on that. But there's also loads of videos on YouTube about the different types of rest. So it's not just physical rest, but there's also social rest. So having some solitude, having some time by yourself to journal, to just celebrate yourself, but also just to rest and to give yourself that gift of just slowing down. Because, our world is very chaotic and very busy. So it's a way of honoring what you've accomplished, but also honoring yourself by recharging and letting yourself rest, because that's a gift and you are worthy of that gift. Okay. The second part to this framework is processing my emotions. So looking at all the things that have come up as a result of this project. So how did I feel? What emotions surfaced as I was doing the project? If you are really good, and I don't always do this, but sometimes like I know people who document their feelings as they're going along, as the project is progressing. During Februllage, I got to do that through my community post. So every day, I posted in a community post thing, and I just said, this is the emotion that came up, or this is what I noticed. This is what I noticed as I was making this collage. So it became a way of tracking and journaling what came up for me as I was doing this like collage a day challenge. And for me, the overall emotion was one of amazement and surprise and also gratitude. So processing your emotions. But some creative projects are really difficult. They produce emotions that are difficult. So it could be anger, frustration. Frustration is like a really big one, particularly if you're working with other people. So it's important that you acknowledge and you notice the emotion that has surfaced as a result of this project or this adventure or this event. And it's really important that you do that because emotions signal, they're signals. They are there to tell you things. And also the emotions that surface that you notice help you for the next step, which I'll come to now. So the third step is to evaluate what you've learned. And this is the bit that most people jump to straight away. So it's like, this is what went right, this is what went wrong, this is what I enjoyed, this is what I didn't, without first acknowledging the feelings that have come up. Because the feelings and emotions that have come up will tell you, they will tell you, maybe they didn't give you an insight as to why certain things were difficult or why certain things were so enjoyable. So it's not just like what went well, what didn't, which is part of this process, this part of this step, is to evaluate. So you say what went well, what didn't go well, but also to ask yourself the question, why? So why was it great? why did it go well, and to kind of make a note of that. So that's also another really important thing. So I'm looking down because I have some notes. So the fourth step, after you've celebrated and rested, you have processed your emotions, you've evaluated what you've learned. Fourth step is rediscovering your inspiration. Now, this is like a really fun step. So I sometimes will create like a Pinterest board or something. And this is a way of, this is now you're moving forward, moving into your next project, right? So now you're like, what am I inspired by? Remind yourself of what you are inspired by. Remind yourself of why you do what you do. Remind yourself of what you want to do. What are your dreams? Because sometimes when we're chasing our next project or our next thing, we forget the things that are meaningful to us. We forget the things that are valuable to us. We forget the reason why we started on the road to begin with. So rediscovering your inspiration is a key step for me, because it reminds me of like why I want to do the things, but also it ignites my curiosity. I'm like, oh, what am I inspired by? And I go back to my board and I'm like, oh yeah, like I still want to do that thing, or I still want to work with this person or whatever, right? So just get your creative juices flowing. That's really important. Because the next step number 5, is considering gentle next steps. Okay, so after you've done your celebration, you've rested, you've processed your emotions, you've noticed what's come up for you, you have, you are reconnecting with your inspiration, you're reconnecting with your love of your art form. And so now it's like, okay, so as a result of all this information I've gathered, what are some next steps I can take? Because action is really important. So this is where you don't just dream. So you don't just stop at what inspires you, but let what inspires you fuel your next step, or your next step into the direction that you want to go into. And I think this is key. Because, so for example, like in the evaluation step, you get to find out like what worked, what didn't, but what would you like more of? So the things that you really loved about this project, what if, like, would you want more of those things in your next project? So if you worked with like this really cool designer, would you want to work with them again? If you got exposed to a new art form or a new medium or a new material, maybe you want to, as a gentle next step, to experiment and to work more in that medium. Maybe. So all of the things that come together to inform this next step. And believe me, like once you start giving your mind and your soul the space, it will give you all the juice. I promise you, all the juice will come. But the juice rarely flows if you shut it down constantly. If you're like, no, I don't have time, blah, blah. If you never give your soul room to speak to you, it won't speak. It won't speak. So I feel like this is one of the ways that I enable my soul to speak to me. So for me, my gentle next step is starting a creative reset, or going back to the artist way. And I will discuss that in another video shortly, like soon. I'm making that video shortly. So yeah, so basically that's it. That's the 5-step creative post-project framework that I use for my reflection and to guide me in my next steps. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining me for this video to hear a bit about how I reflect after a major creative project. If you think this framework might be helpful for you, I've created some resources, a guide and a workbook, link in the description if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you. If you want to revisit my daily collage challenge, I've created a playlist called Februllage 2026, Februllage 2026, which you can access up here somewhere. And in the next video, I'll be sharing with you how those daily collage practices unexpectedly became my first limited art collection. Thank you, and talk to you soon. Bye. Sorry, I'm back. Just to say that I'm recording this today on St. Patrick's Day, and I wanted to wish all my Irish cousins happy St. Patrick's Day. God bless you. Bye.